I have read a text called How Britain Ruled India, and it is written by Jawaharlal Nehru. And the text is about Nehru writing a letter to his daughter about the British rule and system. He states his arguments about the British rule and system, but he also explains and tells about England and India's developments as countries. The speaker is Nehru. He is born in 1889 in British India, where he studied law at Cambridge and died in 1964. He was the first Prime Minister of India and was regarded as the architect of modern India. When he returned to India, he became involved in the struggle for Indian independence. He wrote the letter to his daughter on December 5th, 1932, while he was imprisoned by the English for taking part in the struggle of Indian independence. The receiver is Nehru's daughter, Indira Gandhi. The purpose of this text is Nehru speaking because he wants to express his arguments about the British rule and system. I consider this informative, but also directive. Informative because he does explain a lot. For example, on page 50, he says, "We shall go back to our story. I have told you of the advanced stage of Indian cottage industries when the British came." If you read further down, he explains and tells his daughter about the Indian cottage industries and the machine industries. Another example could be, you need not to take anything for granted, and when the time comes, you can draw your own conclusions. But about one thing most people do agree is that what is wrong with the system, and it is useless getting annoyed with individuals. Here he is being very father-like with the "when the time comes, you can draw your own conclusions." Also, he teaches and tells her not to take anything for granted. I also said it was directive because on page 50, he argues and discusses where to draw the line. Where are we to draw the line then? It is not a question of individuals, but that of a system. Overall, the subject is exactly what the text is called, How Britain Ruled India, and Nehru expressing his arguments. Besides that, the letter is also about Indian independence and how it affected India that Britain was ruling them. For example, on page 50 and 51, he writes that Britain had changed to the new big machine production, and one might think that they would make and support a change in India also. But as he writes, that was not what they did. They did the quite opposite of this. They broke up their industries and discouraged the growth of the machine industry. According to Nehru, it is India themselves who is responsible for the troubles of India. He says so on page 49. Was it not due to our own weakness and ignorance? Weakness and folly are always invitations to despotism. If the British can profit by our mutual dissensions, the fault is ours that we quarrel amongst ourselves. If they can divide us and so weaken us, playing on the selfishness of separate groups, or permitting, this is itself a sign of the superiority of the British. Nehru means that India is responsible for their own troubles, because he thinks the Indians are weak and in ignorance. Britain uses the fact that the Indians quarrel, that they fight amongst themselves. They use that to take control over India. Nehru also says that if Britain can weaken and divide them, this is a sign of that Britain is better and more powerful than India. The solution that Nehru proposes is that we should change the system. He means that if a system is wrong and hurts one another, then it has to be changed, and it doesn't matter who runs it. And as he writes in the text, even good people are helpless in a bad system. He also writes, if we want it changed, let us attack and change the system. He thinks imperialism and capitalism cannot be improved, and the only solution to this is to abolish them. To me, the tone in the letter sounds formal, and it sounds a lot like he knows what he's talking about throughout the whole letter. In the text we see a lot of you and I's, which could indicate that this is a letter, but we also see a lot of we and us, but he might as well have been talking about himself and his daughter. Or maybe the we and us represents India. Most of the text that we have read in class has been of a British point of view, so I think this is the second time that we see it from an Indian point of view, which is very interesting. But I can see some similarities in How Britain Ruled India and Shooting an Elephant by George Orwell. In a text written by George Orwell, the main character expresses his hate for the British Empire in the start of the text, and the quote goes like this: "All I knew was that I was stuck between my hatred of the Empire." In How Britain Ruled India, Nero writes that imperialism and capitalism cannot be improved, and that the only real improvement is to do away with them altogether, to get rid of them. In Shooting an Elephant, it says so, for at that time I had already made up my mind that imperialism was an evil thing, and the sooner I chucked up my job and got out of it, the better. So they both hate imperialism and want to get rid of it. I also see some similarities in the letter Rejecting Knighthood by Rabindranath Tagore. The letter is about Tagore rejecting knighthood and apologizing for the British actions in the town Punjab. First of all, they are both letters, and second of all, they don't seem too keen and fond of the actions that the British do and how they control India, and this could lead to Tagore not liking the system.